What if I told you a private business company once ruled almost all of India? Not a king, not an empire, a company. The East India Company came to India for trade, but within a few decades, it controlled armies, wealth, and millions of lives. This is the unbelievable story of how business became empire. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. I hope you are doing well. Today, we are going to explore one of the most fascinating and shocking stories in world history, the story of the East India Company. Imagine this. A small business company from England travels thousands of miles across the ocean to trade spices and cloth. At first, they are only merchants. They ask kings for permission to do business. They build warehouses. They buy and sell goods. But slowly, step by step, this company becomes more powerful. It creates its own army. It fights wars. It controls cities. It collects taxes from millions of people. And eventually, this private company rules almost the entire Indian subcontinent. How did this happen? How could a company become stronger than kings and emperors? And why did the company finally, if you are learning English, don't worry. I will use simple and clear English so you can easily follow the story. Today's episode will answer all these questions in simple English for ESL learners. So relax, listen carefully, and let us travel back more than 400 years into history. To understand the East India Company, we first need to understand the world during the 15th and 16th centuries. At that time, Europe was hungry for the products of Asia. People in Europe wanted black pepper, cinnamon, silk, cotton cloth, tea, indigo dye, precious stones. These products were rare and expensive in Europe, especially spices. Today, spices are common in kitchens around the world. But hundreds of years ago, spices were extremely valuable. They preserved food and added flavor during long winters. Asian goods reached Europe through long trade routes controlled by Arab merchants and later by the Ottoman Empire. Because of this, European countries wanted direct access to Asia. Portugal became one of the first countries to find a sea route to India. In the year 1598, a Portuguese explorer named Vasco da Gama arrived in India by sea. This changed world history forever. Soon, other European countries also wanted a share of Asian trade. Spain, Holland, France, and England all entered the competition. England especially wanted wealth and power from Eastern trade. And this desire gave birth to a company that would later change India forever. On the last day of the year 1600, Queen Elizabeth I of England officially approved a new trading company. Its full name was the Governor and Company of Merchants of London Trading into the East Indies. That was a very long name, so people simply called it the East India Company. The company was created by wealthy English merchants. These merchants invested money together. This was called a joint stock company. Instead of one person taking all the risk, many investors shared the cost and profit. This business model was revolutionary. The English government gave the company special rights. Only the East India Company could legally trade between England and the East. This monopoly made the company extremely powerful. The company's first goal was simple: make profit through trade. Nothing more, at least in the beginning. The company first focused on Indonesia and the Spice Islands. But the Dutch were already very powerful there. So the English turned their attention toward India. And India at that time was one of the richest places on earth. When the East India Company arrived, India was ruled mainly by the Mughal Empire. The Mughal Empire was wealthy, organized, and powerful. Cities like Agra, Delhi, Lahore, and Dhaka were famous for art, trade, and beautiful architecture. Indian craftsmen produced world-famous cotton and silk textiles. Indian cloth was so fine and beautiful that Europeans loved it. The Mughal emperors controlled huge territories and enormous wealth. Compared to the Mughal Empire, England was still a smaller and less wealthy kingdom. So in the beginning, the East India Company was weak. Very weak. The company needed permission from Mughal rulers to trade. In 1608, the company sent its first ships to the Indian port of Surat in western India. At first, the Portuguese opposed them strongly, but the English slowly gained influence. In 1615, An English ambassador named Sir Thomas Roe visited the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. Roe requested trading rights for the East India Company. Eventually, the Mughals allowed the company to establish trading centers called factories. These factories were not manufacturing factories like today. They were trading stations and warehouses. The company built important trading centers in Surat, Madras, Bombay, Calcutta. These cities later became major centers of British power in India. The East India Company became rich mainly through trade. The company exported Indian goods to Europe, especially cotton textiles, silk, saltpeter, indigo, tea, spices. Indian textiles were extremely popular in Europe. People loved Indian cotton because it was soft, colorful, and high quality. The company earned massive profits. As trade increased, the company grew stronger. But trade alone was not enough. The company wanted more control, and slowly, business turned into politics. The 18th century changed everything. The Mughal Empire began to weaken after the death of Emperor Aurangzeb in 1707. Regional rulers started fighting for power. India became politically divided. The East India Company saw opportunity in this chaos. The company began interfering in local politics. It supported some rulers against others. It offered military help, and in return, it demanded land, money, and special privileges. Soon, the company built its own private army. This was extraordinary. Imagine a business company with soldiers, weapons, and warships. By the mid-18th century, the East India Company had tens of thousands of soldiers. Many of them were Indian soldiers called sepoys. The company trained them using European military methods. This army became the foundation of British power in India. After gaining Bengal, the company expanded rapidly. It defeated other Indian kingdoms one by one, sometimes through war, sometimes through diplomacy, sometimes through betrayal. The company collected taxes from Indian farmers and merchants. These taxes funded the company's army and administration. In 1765, the Mughal emperor gave the company the right to collect revenue in Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. This was called the Diwani rights. Now the company controlled both trade and taxation. It became incredibly rich. But ordinary Indians suffered badly. Many company officials became corrupt. Heavy taxation hurt farmers. Traditional industries declined. In 1770, Bengal suffered a terrible famine. Millions of people died. Historians still debate how much the company's policies worsened the disaster, but many believe company greed played a major role. Meanwhile, British officials and businessmen in India became extremely wealthy. Some returned to England with huge fortunes. People in Britain even gave them a nickname, nabobs. As the company grew richer and more powerful, the British government became concerned. The company was no longer just a business. It controlled territory larger than many countries. So the British Parliament started regulating it. In 1773, the British government passed the Regulating Act. This increased government supervision over the company. Later, more laws followed. The Governor-General became the most powerful British official in India. Famous governors like Warren Hastings and Lord Cornwallis introduced new systems of administration, taxation, and law. English education also began spreading later. Railways, telegraphs, and postal systems eventually developed under British rule. But these developments mainly served British interests at first. The company's main goal remained profit and control. During the 19th century, the East India Company expanded across most of India. It fought many wars, including the Mysore Wars, the Maratha Wars, the Sikh Wars. Powerful Indian rulers resisted British expansion. One famous leader was Tipu Sultan of Mysore. He fought fiercely against the British, but eventually, he was defeated and killed. The company continued growing stronger. Through military power and political agreements, it controlled vast territories. By the 1800s, much of India was under company rule. And still, remember this important fact. India was not ruled directly by the British government yet. It was ruled mainly by a company, a private business corporation. This remains one of the strangest realities in world history. Eventually, anger against the East India Company exploded. In 1857, Indian soldiers in the company army rebelled. This event is known by different names: the Sepoy Mutiny, the Indian Rebellion, the First War of Independence. The rebellion began partly because of new rifle cartridges rumored to contain cow and pig fat. This offended both Hindu and Muslim soldiers. But the revolt had deeper causes: political anger, economic exploitation, cultural tensions, loss of traditional power. The rebellion spread across northern India. Many rulers and ordinary people joined the uprising. Delhi became a major center of resistance. For a time, the rebellion seriously threatened British control. But eventually, the British crushed the revolt with brutal force. Thousands died. Cities were destroyed. The rebellion failed militarily, but it changed history forever. After the rebellion, the British government decided that the East India Company could no longer rule India. In 1858, the British Crown officially took direct control of India. This period became known as the British Raj. The East India Company lost its political power. A few years later, the company was completely dissolved. After ruling large parts of India for about 100 years, the company disappeared. A business corporation had built an empire, and then history ended its rule. The East India Company left a complicated legacy. On one hand, it connected India more closely with the global economy. Modern infrastructure such as railways and telegraphs expanded during British rule. English became an important language in India. Modern administrative systems developed. But the company also caused enormous suffering. Economic exploitation damaged industries and agriculture. Political control destroyed many traditional powers. Famines, taxation, and colonial policies hurt millions of people. The company's rule also created deep divisions and resentment. Today, historians continue debating its legacy. Some focus on modernization. Others focus on exploitation and colonialism. But almost everyone agrees on one thing: the rise of the East India Company was one of the most extraordinary events in world history. A private company crossed oceans for trade, then transformed itself into a military and political empire. Very few stories in history are as dramatic as this one. Let us quickly review today's journey. The East India Company was created in England in the year 1600 for trade with Asia. At first, it came to India only for business. It traded spices, textiles, silk, tea, and other goods. The company became rich through commerce. As the Mughal Empire weakened, the company entered Indian politics. It built its own army and fought wars. The Battle of Plassey in 1757 became a major turning point. After that, the company gradually ruled large parts of India. It collected taxes, controlled trade, and expanded its territory. But exploitation, economic problems, and political anger increased. Finally, the Great Rebellion of 1857 changed everything. The British government removed the company from power and directly ruled India afterward. The East India Company eventually disappeared. But its impact on India, Britain, and world history remains enormous even today. Thank you for listening to today's episode. The story of the East India Company teaches us an important lesson. Trade can change history, business can create power, and sometimes economic ambition can reshape entire civilizations. If you enjoyed this podcast, share it with friends who love history and English learning. And until next time, keep learning, keep listening, and keep exploring the stories that shaped our world. Goodbye.